Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode number 32 of the Fitness Devil podcast. Today's guest is Holly Baxter. So Holly has a Masters of Dietetics, and she works with a lot of nutrition and fitness competitors in the industry. We'll tell you more about her soon. We talk about how she sets herself apart from a lot of what's out there in the fitness industry in the Instagram realm, as she's a highly educated and evidence-based coach. We get into a lot of practical nutrition discussion, including fiber, alcohol. We do a pretty in-depth discussion of ketogenic diets and what they are and what they aren't. And she speaks on a lot of health issues related to some of the stuff that she's seen problems in our industry. We also get into her macro-friendly ebook and what else she's got coming up. And it's a great episode. She's amazing, so please stay tuned and check it out.
Shut up and sit down.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. And today's guest is Holly Baxter. So welcome, Holly.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we'll try to tell them a little bit about you. We have, hold on, I'm getting some feedback here. There we go. Okay, so we'd best introduce you to the audience. You're originally from Tasmania, Australia, and you're now living in the Tampa Bay area.
Yes, I am.
You hold a Master's in Dietetics, a Bachelor of Food Sciences and Nutrition, and you're a physique coach and personal trainer. We're not done yet. Natural professional fitness model. And you also are a IFBB Figure Competitor. You do seminars and travel and speak. And what did I miss?
That kind of sums it up, I think. Yeah, no, that definitely sounds like me.
You don't train dolphins or anything? You don't train dolphins or do anything crazy?
Oh my God, actually, it's so funny you say dolphins.
Uh-oh.
I was in Mexico going back like 12 months at a figure competition. We had a holiday straight after the Olympia, and I actually got to train dolphins. So.
Oh, are you serious? I didn't even...
I'm serious.
As I say, like, I'm not creeping or fall. Like, I had no idea. That was the first thing that crossed my mind because there was like 1,000 things on here. I was like, she has to do something else. And of course, it's that. You don't do anything else?
Well, out of the science and community, no, you've reeled them off. I obviously have lots of hobbies, but
and I guess that's what we're touching with, so that works.
Well, let's dive into it a little bit more. We usually bypass long origin stories. A lot of our guests do a lot of podcasts, and I was searching. I couldn't find any that you were on. I bet there's something there, but I couldn't find anything. So at least I guess our audience would be interested in knowing a few of the highlights along your career path, about moving to North America from Australia, and why you chose to help others in the fitness industry.
Sure. Look, I think a lot of my passion for food science, nutrition, and training comes from my upbringing. I was quite competitive when I was young in athletics, and I did basketball, and I think my parents threw me into just about every single sport, which is awesome. So I definitely had a flair for competitive sports, and as I was getting into my early teen years and later teen years, I was doing fantastic actually at track athletics. And at the time, I was working with a top coach. His name was Peter Fortune, and he coached Kathy Freeman to win the gold at the Olympics in the 400 meters. She competed for Australia. And we had kind of had a few conversations about body composition and physique. And, I was quite young at the time. And it was a good and a bad thing. Actually, the advice that he'd given to me kind of brought on like an eating disorder as a young athlete, but it definitely got me interested in learning. And thankfully, I've been able to go on and learn what not to do and what to do when it comes to optimizing your health for performance in sport. So I think, my background in sports has led to wanting to get involved in the nutrition community, and that took me out of my hometown in Tassie to study and pursue my career in nutrition sciences. And I just got super, super lucky to meet Lane. And now I have this phenomenal position as the Director of Nutrition at BioLane, which I would say is one of the best nutrition companies in the world. So that's kind of where it has grown through.
I guess for anyone who's listening, Dr. Lane Norton is a most of our audience know who he is. I've been following him for a really
Yeah.
long time. And a lot of our guests are actually well connected to him, like Sohee Lee and Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, who we just released. So you're
Yes.
working really closely with Lane. So we'll probably hit on that
Yeah,
a little bit
absolutely.
And kind of explain a little bit about, I guess, where you work and kind of what you do, just for the people who don't know.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I still have my own business, which is HB Nutrition and Training, which is an online nutrition company. So I do one-on-one coaching for clients. I work probably 50% with general pop, and then the other 50% would be elite athletes and bodybuilding competitors. So right through bikini to bodybuilding. So that is making up the majority of my work. And then, as you mentioned before, I'm more recently getting to do a lot more travel, seminars, training camps, and all that kind of thing. So that is the crux of my business, and what I do is nutrition coaching.
Nice. Now we get to do the fun stuff.
Okay, sure, fire away.
Instagram in the fitness industry. I guess we can say we're riddled with competitors selling nutrition coaching, dietary ideologies, and kind of a lot of these individuals don't necessarily have the education or credentials outside of having places in a handful of competitions. So doing well in competition.
Yeah.
How have you faced this challenge of setting yourself apart from, I guess, that industry in the sense that you're highly educated and evidence-based and a coach? So how do you set yourself apart from those?
Look, it's been a real challenge, to be honest. I used to get really grumpy and I was angry about it, and I just kind of hated everybody that tried to do it, and I didn't have the backing or the science to support what they did. And as you said, a lot of people have come from, taking up a sport and just being successful at it themselves.
Yeah.
And then because they've really enjoyed it, they've decided to take it on as their career. But look, there's a lot more to it, as and I'm sure as plenty of your other guests have spoken about. It's not as basic as what people kind of assume. So I think first and foremost, just being female in a fairly male-dominant industry has been probably my biggest challenge when it comes to growing a successful business. I think just having the credibility as a woman in a bodybuilding, industry is really tough. It's not like a man is going to look at me and go, "Oh, hey, I want to get trained by her." I mean, they kind of have to. I feel like for me as a woman, I really have to prove myself from a science standpoint that, hey, I'm not just out there, flashing my ass and, showing my bits and pieces to the world to get some kind of credibility or to get a following. I definitely don't want that to be the way that I'm seen to the rest of the market. As you said, I have the schooling and the education to kind of support that. So I think for me, it's been about being consistent with the message that I want to portray and not giving in or following along all the other sheep as so far as how I market myself. So I think for a long time, I felt that I needed to continue to do lots of competitions and continually show my physique as a means of growing my business. But I've really come to realize that it's more about just being consistent and putting out lots of content and information to kind of gain people's trust, I suppose. And then everything else is just kind of a bonus.
Would you speak a little bit to, I guess we'll call it the dangers of more or less not being certified or not having the education, just considering people are handling other people's nutrition, what they eat and what they put in their body?
So do you mean sorry, I'm trying to understand what you're asking.
Basically, speak to the point of the dangers that could be involved with someone that maybe isn't as educated and doesn't exactly know what's going on, but they did well in a competition. What's the implications of that for people getting into this industry?
There have been quite a few reported cases around the world of clients people being given really, really high intakes of protein and very low micronutrient-based diets. And as a result, they have led to various chronic conditions and even deaths. So it's not common, but I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing a lot And we are working countless hours on clients who have metabolic adaptation or metabolic suppression, and that has stemmed from coaches who don't have that understanding, or they might have kind of glassed over the top or the surface of, what makes up a healthy diet, but because they don't have the fundamentals or a biochemical or a chemistry background, they don't really know what's going on, at those deeper levels, and then they're ruining women and men's metabolism. So we do a lot of corrective work in trying to get these people out of this phase or state where they're chronically restricted. They're having very little calories in order to get into the physique that they're wanting. And then, they're gaining all this weight back because they're so metabolically suppressed that when they want to eat again, they're binging, and there's all these kind of negative relationships coming out of it. But, that'd have to be the most concerning thing that I'm seeing of late.
We're seeing a lot of this stuff, even on a local level, where the only qualification someone has is actually having done the show, meaning that they actually have no credentials whatsoever. There's a lot of the certifications that really don't mean a whole lot, and a lot of the education people get is through other work they've done. But you quite literally are seeing a ton of coaches who are holding no active certification. They don't even have insurance.
There's a lot of liability. I mean, someone could easily be sued for damages. I don't know of any cases immediately that I'm aware of, but if something bad were to go wrong with a person that is coaching without any credentials, they could be in a lot of trouble. So it's frustrating to see that there are that there are some courses available for people to become certified trainers, and they're like nutrition certs you basically get out of a cereal box, and they're like 6 weeks online. That's it. I'm still learning, and I have been doing this since I was 18 years old. I am 29. I've been learning for 10 years plus about nutrition. And 7 years of that was at a university level, and I still learn. I'm not really sure how people expect to have a sound understanding of nutrition and human physiology and anatomy when they get 6 weeks of coaching.
Well, I think they just see a quick buck, to be honest. They're just seeing the internet and the fact that they look good, and people are probably begging them for nutrition plans, and they're like, I can make some money on this. And then
I think that's the thing. A lot of people enjoy the sport and then think, oh, well, I should just do this as a career. But there's a lot of work, and especially to be successful at it, it takes years of, turning the crank. It doesn't happen overnight. I think a lot of people think that, it's a phenomenal business to be in, but it's a very saturated market. So I think if someone is to consider taking up some kind of personal training business or nutrition, that their heart is really in it, because it is tough.
Yeah, well, let's actually take some of the questions that we prepared for this actually hit on a lot of very specific topics about nutrition, which is sometimes a place we don't necessarily go into this kind of detail. And we have a lot of fitness professionals who listen, but a lot of enthusiasts who pull a lot away from this. So I'll start with the first one, and that was about fiber. And we're always hearing about the importance of fiber, and many fitness coaches know little beyond that statement, but yet you've written frequently on it. Could you offer a deconstruction of why fiber plays an important role in our digestion and health?
Sure. Look, I think if we were to speak of the health benefits of dietary fiber, straight away we can look at all of the GI, gastrointestinal disorders and things that are kind of stemming from this. But if you can have a good dietary fiber intake, you're reducing your risk of things like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, obviously basic as it comes, constipation for that matter. Yep. I have a lot of people that I work with that really struggle with their bowel movement. So, and it is all stemming back to their dietary fiber fluid intake. So there's some of the more common things that dietary fiber is good for, but it also has a big part in blood sugar regulation and reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes. So obviously dietary fiber slows down the digestion of carbohydrates, and therefore slows that insulin release, and therefore can be better manage someone's blood sugar levels. So I guess when it comes to diabetes, it's quite important, but also like cholesterol. There's plenty of other things, and satiation or being feeling full. There's obviously plenty of things like that dietary fiber is really important for.
Well, at least all these shitty coaches that we're talking about, when they're giving people these diets full of chicken and broccoli and brown rice, at least they're getting some fiber in the broccoli. But funny enough, that's not even complete in the sense that you have soluble and insoluble fiber that you need.
Exactly. There are two types of dietary fiber, and I think a lot of people tend to, if they're getting enough, and I do so many nutritional analysis with my one-on-one coaching, and for the majority of people, like especially for people that are trying to lose weight and are on calorie-restricted diets, it is really challenging, especially for women with lower intakes overall, to hit dietary fiber just because of the lower volumes of food. So I usually recommend people to try and consume around 500 grams of veggies every day to kind of supplement their insoluble fiber. Obviously, that is the type of fiber that adds bulk to your I suppose the biology that's passing through your stomach. But then soluble fiber comes from things like our oats. So if you can imagine, like things that expand in your stomach and take on water. So those two function together for optimal bowel health.
Cool. I was going to say, you could say poop, right? Like we can swear and all sorts of other stuff on here. So if you got to say poop, you say poop.
I think working in clinical dietetics for a little while, we talk about poo and bowel motions every single day. I even had like this little Bristol stool chart that I had to carry around on my neck and would talk to clients and patients about. So
yeah, she's over it. She doesn't want to talk about it for a minute.
All right, we could move on from the poop.
Let's move on to alcohol. I think that and this might be one of those myths and stuff, but everyone like wants to understand alcohol and its effects on fat loss. Some people just like consuming it, even if they are dieting. So could you kind of offer or summarize some key points that people need to know about consuming alcohol? And I guess more or less how it affects fat loss, but how they can include it in their normal life without fucking up everything.
Sure. It's hard. That question is asked all the time. Okay, firstly, if you consume a low to moderate amount of alcohol every day, it will not impede your fat loss efforts.
Sweet.
Period. So alcohol does have an energy value, just like proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So we need to consider that it contributes to our total daily calorie requirements, right? So if you know the value of alcohol and calories, we can kind of work it into our energy targets to ensure we can continue to lose body fat. So if it came to a fat loss diet, for example, you would want to be making sure that you still hit your daily protein requirements. You would also want to make sure that you're still hitting your daily calorie requirements, but you can denote some of your calories from alcohol. So alcohol has a value of 7.5 calories per gram. So I actually have a really cool article on my website that helps people to calculate, their favorite drinks and how to incorporate them into their diets and still lose body fat, which is kind of cool. So people can always head over and check that out if they would like to.
Did you write on your Mexico trip and kind of how you kind of incorporated liquor into that equation? Which I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think after a show, a lot of people just stop tracking if they're not like ready for a reverse diet or anything like that, which is a big problem because I know people can get kind of out of hand. But I guess tracking isn't always the easiest thing for people. So I usually say, if you're going to be going and having like a weekend of drinks or there's a festival or something like that, kind of go in with a bit of a game plan. So like for example, just this morning I had a client who's going on a holiday for 4 or 5 days next week. She's like, okay, what do I do? You know, I want to be able to go and go away, have some drinks, eat what I like. Like, have you got any strategies for when I go on this holiday? I was like, yeah, sure. So usually I would say like, pick whichever nights you're intending on having drinks. So if it's Friday and Saturday, that's great. So on those days, work at how many drinks do you think you're going to have? What's normal for you? So I don't know. I'll just use Lane, for example. He drinks lots of beer. He might have like 5 beers in one afternoon or something, or an evening if we were going somewhere with friends. So if you can calculate the caloric value from those drinks, then work out what you have left for the remainder of the day and kind of work backwards. So try and hit your protein targets, but then subtract the calories from alcohol away from your dietary fats and your carbohydrates. So you can kind of substitute out some carbs and fats to allow for a little bit of alcohol if that's what you want to do. So yeah, I said to this client, look at what you're intending on doing in the evenings and plan your day around that.
I guess there's one other thing that's probably worth noting too, is to be mindful of how the effects of alcohol will change behavior and inhibitions, which might lead to some problems with the other food intake.
Like McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm going to raise my hand and say, yeah, that's definitely me. I think for most people, we can kind of get by on having one or two drinks and still having a fairly good amount of control. But once you hit that threshold, yeah, our inhibitions definitely decrease. So if you're somebody that, likes to have a drink and that you get hungry or you tend to just hit, the stuff it mode afterwards, I would tread very carefully. But also, you've got to think about, you might be able to still hit your daily calorie targets or whatever it is in order to continue your fat loss goal, for example, or to maintain your physique. But it's then the subsequent late night that you probably would have with that, and then how it makes you feel the next day. Did you also miss your training? You've got to think about those ramifications as well. So when it comes down to performance, alcohol probably isn't the best thing, but you can certainly still maintain a fairly good physique by including a little bit.
I was going to say, you mentioned late night snacks. Like in Canada, we have these things called donaires. I don't know if you understand what those are. They're awesome. But that's like you go out and you have a few, let's say 5 drinks, and you're going to get a donaire or McDonald's. What's your thing?
What is my thing? Oh my gosh.
Like if you were to go and something happened, you're like, fuck it. We're going through the drive-thru. Where are you going?
Well, I have celiac disease, so it has totally limited my abilities to go anywhere afterwards when it comes to fast food. I would probably go and have a burger if I could, but I can't eat that stuff anymore. And so it makes it kind of sad. Usually I would eat something when I get home, and I have a lockbox now. I can't have bad junk food around, or I would just eat it all. I don't have an off switch. I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So yeah, I probably would be going for the Reese's chips, or what else? Ice cream. Definitely ice cream.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You're the worst. You're the worst late night drinker. You can't go anywhere. And Dairy Queen's not open.
I can't do drive-throughs and takeouts afterwards. Anyway, it kind of sucks. I can eat chips. That's okay.
For anyone listening, you got to go check out our website or social media, because you're going to realize Holly's in fantastic shape. So whatever this sounds like, she's actually pretty good.
She knows her stuff.
But and you mentioned,
I do like cooking.
You mentioned your website, and actually I got into there a little bit, and I was looking at some of the articles, and this is a really well put together website. It's very accessible. Anyone who's looking for really good nutritional information, we'll make sure that we will say the website name a couple times. But guys, this is really high quality stuff. So I got into that article library. And you've written a lot on ketogenic diets, which it's amusing for no other reason than the fact that at any given moment, Lane is at total war on Twitter with keto zealots. It's his favorite thing in the world. I guess it's part of his shtick. But this is pretty popular right now. I definitely would qualify it as a fad diet. But many people might not understand how keto dieting works, how it isn't for everybody. Would you give our enthusiasts and our professional listeners a little bit of an overview of keto, how it works, what it isn't, and who it's suitable for?
Sure. So I think just to give you an overview of what ketogenic diets are, it is a very high-fat, moderate to low protein diet, and very low in carbohydrates. So essentially it causes a shift from our body's primary metabolic fuel, which is carbohydrates, to fats. And it also alters our fat metabolism so that we produce these ketone bodies in the liver, specifically acetone, acetoacetate, and beta-hydroxybutyrate. Lovely words. But basically, our body can use these to function instead of carbohydrates. So the reason that this kind of all came about, in fact, it started initially in line with management of things like Alzheimer's and epilepsy. And for some reason, it kind of like started to take on in the bodybuilding community as a more superior measure or method to induce fat loss. And the reason being is, I think if we look at the role of carbohydrates in our body, when you digest carbohydrates, we release insulin. Insulin is known as a storage hormone and consequently can increase fat storage. But there have been a lot of leaps and bounds, I think, in the way that this is interpreted. And overall, the research actually shows that a ketogenic diet is actually not better than a non-ketogenic diet, so a diet that does contain carbohydrates. But the key is you need to compare that with total calories and protein. So if protein and calories are equated or equal, that ratio of carbohydrates to fats actually makes zero difference on your ability to lose body fat or gain muscle for that matter. So that's the first thing. I think a lot of people think that this is some magic dietary strategy that's going to get them into the best shape of their lives, but it's simply not the case. So that's the first thing when it comes to keto. But you asked about who it might be useful for. Mm-hmm. I think you've got to take into consideration your personal preferences for food choices. So if you're somebody that really, really likes fats and perhaps doesn't care so much for sweets and treats, like you might be a savory person, then maybe a keto diet would be great for you because you get to eat a lot of, things like avocados, lots of oils, creams, like people that like creamy based dishes, I guess, would really like this. If you're a nut lover, seeds, all those kind of really fatty foods, you have to eat a lot of them because the ratio for this ketogenic diet to actually be effective and to ensure that our blood glucose levels don't rise too high is actually 80% of our calories coming from fats. So it's really high. You guys could probably go and do like a quick test of what that would look like for you. But it's only 10 to 15% protein. So yeah, it's actually not as fantastic as I think a lot of people think it is. And you can't just freely eat fats either. Like you still have to maintain your calories or you will gain weight, period.
That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions with a lot of these diets. And you talked about when you equate protein, when you equate calories, it's not superior. Mm-hmm. People come in with the idea that diets like paleo dieting, you follow the rules, calories don't matter. Keto dieting, eat lots of fat, calories don't matter.
Yeah, calories don't matter. I don't know.
Intermittent fasting, just as long as you eat within this window, calories don't matter. All of these diets actually have properties that are good at restricting calories. That's actually why they often work or create the illusion they're superior. But in of themselves, the calories still matter.
And I think that was one of the biggest things when I was writing for Power Act Strength. And as I went on this, basically this keto powerlifting kind of experiment. And mostly everyone was like, wow, what are your proteins at and stuff? And I'm like, I'm a 220-pound person. I'm like, they're like 150, 160. Why is it so low? And they just didn't understand it. And that was one of the biggest misconceptions is like, well, your proteins need to be way higher. And I'm like, no, just don't worry about it. That's
exactly.
the science.
That's the thing. I think people, I guess, again, if you don't have that science background or you haven't done any kind of chemistry or biochemistry in like undergraduate days, you don't get to learn about the different energy pathways. So some of the common mistakes, I guess, with ketogenic diets is that people will still have really, really, really high protein intakes. And if you are having, say, a diet that contains more than 25% of calories coming from protein, what ends up happening is a process called gluconeogenesis, which is basically your proteins are then broken down into glucose through various means, and you end up still using glucose as your primary fuel. So that's probably one of the main things. I think the traditional ketogenic diet is only like, as I said, 10 to 15% protein and 80% fats. And I actually had to do this. I had a medical condition just around this time last year, or a little bit earlier actually, where I needed to do ketogenic diet just to make sure that I could fight this condition. And it was not fun. I must say, I think like 3 months into it, I was just like someone please give me some carbs. Yeah, it was really frustrating.
One of my frustrating parts too was like I was pretty big, and I think my maintenance was at like I was working at a gym and my NEAT went up to the roof, and it was like 4,000 calories. Now, at 160 grams of protein, that doesn't leave my options very open to get my fats where they need to be.
You just have to be eating like a lot of simple sugars and things, I think, by the time, like if your calories are that high. In fact, I got up to around 3,000 calories when I was doing this ketogenic diet myself. And yeah, it's really hard to just eat that much fat. Like I was just literally having like creamy chicken or creamy like bacon dishes, like, and sausages. I just wanted to feel like healthy again, eat something
it's good. It like tastes good initially, but then like once you realize how much fat you have to get and what foods elicit that amount of fat, your options are like oil, bacon.
It's quite restrictive, I think. And I had a lady email me the other day, and she's like, "Oh, I think I'd really like to try this ketogenic diet." And I was like, "Look, here's a list of foods that you're going to be able to eat. Obviously, yes, you can still eat plenty of vegetables, but you gotta love this stuff because this is what you will be eating majority." I think there's that huge misconception that it's just unlimited proteins and whatnot. So yeah, I think deciding what your personal food preferences are is like the number one thing I ask clients when it comes to setting up their macro targets. How do you like to eat? What foods do you enjoy? Because at the end of the day, the diet that is going to be most successful for you is the one that is going to be sustainable. So if you hate fats and you don't particularly like or care for fat foods, or you also are somebody that really loves to eat sweets, keto is not going to be for you.
And there's one other element that we didn't talk about with keto. We mentioned recently on the podcast was just the water element of it. So when you take a lot of carbohydrates out of your diet, you actually lose a lot of body water, which is why when someone first goes on a ketogenic diet, they notice initial weight loss, which is loss of water weight because of the way that carbohydrates and water bind to each other. So it creates this illusion that initially it's superior. Of course, guess what? You come off that keto diet, you're going to regain that water weight as you replenish muscle stored energy, glycogen.
I was just about to say muscle glycogen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so these sort of things play into this, and again, it creates this illusion that somehow this diet is superior when you're paying attention to weight, not necessarily your body fat levels.
Yeah.
I kind of want to talk about, and you made a point of this, was kind of speaking on health issues and just that you're seeing more and more with people that are coming to see you and that you're working with, particularly in the case of women, related to dieting, fat loss, stress, how stress affects anxiety, eating disorders, essentially how all this is wreaking havoc on our health and on our bodies. Would you kind of go in a little bit more depth on dealing with these issues, just because I know you're going to speak really well to it?
Sure. I think speaking in general is not something I do very well.
Yeah.
I like to write,
Yeah. Go into it.
Okay. So I think at the moment I'm dealing mostly with women. I probably have 80 to 20% client base that are women. And I don't know whether it is because it's been an area that I have kind of openly discussed on my YouTube channel or on other social media. But more and more people are kind of coming to me and saying, "Hey, look, I wanted to lose weight going back a few years. So I got into this whole fitness thing, did my first show, and I had a really terrible coach, or they're okay, but my calories got right down, and I was on 800 calories, 700 calories, and I was doing 12 hours of training a week, and so they're essentially burning the candle at both ends as far as excessive amounts of training, very little nutritional intake, and then they've either rebounded or have at the same time developed a terrible relationship with food. And that has actually led to various eating disorders. And I'm seeing a lot of people coming to me with bulimia, binge eating disorder, or just a really disordered food relationship. So I think the thing that I have been able to help people most with is the concept of flexible dieting. I'm sure you and your listeners are familiar with that, and it's something that I'm a really big advocate for. But just being able to help people correct what is going on and get them to a place where they're training at a manageable amount, where it's not impeding their entire lives. If I said to somebody, what is your optimal amount of training if you could go and exercise, most people probably would say 4 or 5 times. Cool. If I didn't have to train at all, that'd be great. But I know for a lot of people it's a form of relaxing and things like that, but around that 4 or 5 training sessions a week is optimal. So if that is the end goal for a lot of these people, that is kind of where I'm trying to get them. But then for them to be able to do that, they'd have to be on next to no calories because they've been through these awful extreme diets. So at the moment I am running a reverse dieting coaching program with Lane. Actually, we started this back on the 12th of February. So we've got a really good group that are doing 3 or 6 month reverse diets. And we're essentially trying to get their calories up as high as possible within their goals as far as weight is concerned, because with any reverse diet, there is a risk of increasing weight, but we can very effectively manage that weight gain, which is all going to come back to what the client or the person wants. So if they only want to gain 2 pounds, that's it. Otherwise, it's the end of the world. Well, we can work with that. It just means it's a slower road to getting them back to good health and to their calorie intake. So
would you just explain just reverse dieting for some of the listeners who don't quite understand that? And then, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So reverse dieting is essentially increasing your calories in order to correct metabolic adaptation. So when your body slows down to compensate for very little calories coming in from food. So, it's basically an investment in your metabolic health. So unlike a muscle gain program where you are encouraged to gain weight and you are expected to gain a certain amount of weight each week, with a reverse diet, we're trying to increase your calories but with minimal weight regain. So we have different speeds that we can actually do this at, which is depending on the client.
It largely has to do with very, very gradual increases in calorie intake. And
that's correct.
The metabolism tends to just simply absorb those and it auto-regulates. I guess, is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, I guess so. I speak about this on a video I'm actually about to release today. It's I'm actually starting a reverse diet myself. It's been a long time coming, so I'm up to week 2 and posting that this afternoon. And Lane and I actually discussed in this what are some of the reasons for this this phenomenon happening. And it kind of comes back to when you're taking in more calories, typically, when we look at, I should take a few steps back. When we look at energy balance, we're looking at your calories in, calories out, but they're affected by things like your training volumes or your exercise that we do in the gym. And then there's also something called your thermic effect of food. And then we also have NEAT. And what I think is happening here when we do start to reintroduce calories again is that your body kind of goes, oh, wow, I've got all this energy again. And all of a sudden we start to stop conserving that energy and moving around a little bit more. And I even noticed last week when I upped my calories by 200 or something, I just felt a little bit more energized. And I did an extra bike ride up to the shops and back. Like I had a little bit of extra energy. So I think, that is one of the body's ways of kind of getting around this. We just start to fidget more and, we move like without knowing. So I think NEAT is a big contributor to this.
Absolutely. I actually think that's entirely true. I noticed that I can eat largely almost anything I want. I'm a big guy. I'm weighing more than 250 pounds. But I am a fidgety person. I'm always moving around. If I'm watching a client, I'm pacing around them, looking at multiple angles. I don't stop. It's just because I take in so many calories, my need is through the roof.
I think that's a good point to touch on. So again, going back to this ketogenic experiment, I switched careers from a teacher to starting the train. Anyways, long story short, I knew my maintenance. It's 3,200 calories. And I get in this keto diet and I'm like, oh my God, I'm losing all this weight. But I kept losing weight and I couldn't even put together the simple NEAT process. And I know it, I'm smarter than that. But then I had to literally raise my calories to 4,000 because I'm running around, looking this, doing that. And it played a huge factor, like 800 calories a day for someone my size. Like that's like 2 extra meals. And I think that people don't understand that idea as much as they should.
Well, it's a lack of carbs going to your brain. That's why you couldn't process that.
Well, yeah, honestly, like maybe, like I sat there for, I couldn't figure it out. And like I feel like I'm smart. I'm a smart guy. And it just went right over my head because I was like, man, this ketogenic diet, I know the science, like it shouldn't work this well. I don't want to be losing this much weight. And I put 2 and 2 together. I'm like, hey, stop losing weight. What the fuck? Like my maintenance is my maintenance. maintenance, it should work. But my NEAT went up, and an 800 calorie deficit dropped me a pound to a pound and a half every week, and it just didn't make sense.
This whole, just going back really quickly to the eating disorders,
Yeah.
it's astonishing how prevalent this has shown up in our podcasts. Off air, we mentioned Sohee Lee very briefly, who is also close to Lane, and she talked on her episode, one of our earliest ones, that, her battles with eating disorders. We had Lindsay and Dean Somerset on the podcast, and Lindsay detailed hers. We've had other people on here. Michelle Bagnall talked about how her first coach, one of her first coaching experiences was a really, really bad one. It was something that you described as just starved and dieted down, very, very cliche cookie cutter stuff. And some of the battles that she had facing that. And this is just so prevalent. You hear these horror stories all over the industry. And one of the reasons why I like having guests like you and everybody else who mentioned is to get young women who are in this industry, competing maybe, who are looking for their first coaching experience or have gone through this, to understand this is not how it has to be. And hopefully that what they'll do is they'll follow someone like you, someone like Sohee, who is teaching a better way and break the cycle of a lot of these dinosaurs that are still doing the things that were popular in the 60s and 70s.
What's the better understanding? Because again, it's hard to make informed decisions if you're not informed. And I guess part of our goal is to put that information out there from people like you and this evidence-based stuff so that they can be well-informed and ask the right questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think even my very first coach, when I started in bodybuilding, I just wanted to see what other people were doing at the time. And I have some articles and videos that I've put up about this. Actually, it's quite funny. But he said to me, "Oh, you need to eat." It was steak with specifically organic coconut oil for breakfast, and then it was sauerkraut for morning tea at 11 a.m. And I was like, "Okay, dude, I get it. You're different to me." But why? And I think that's the thing. I have always wanted to know more, and I want an answer, and a scientific answer. When I go and look for these things, or somebody can't give me that answer, that was the time for me to go, we're severing this tie, because I don't think that you have any idea what you're doing. So there are still a lot of these dinosaurs out there who are not educating themselves with the up to date scientific literature. But
I was going to say that's a perfect mindset to have going into these things, though. It's understanding that, let's just use figure competitions or bodybuilding, is that these competitions, it's fun, and we have these coaches, but having an understanding of what you're doing is going to help performance, but it's also going to stop you from putting yourself in a situation where these things might sort of happen. And I guess that's the mental process I wish more people would adopt, because why is a very important way to just put a break in things and kind of figure out where you are and how much your coach actually knows.
Yeah, I really encourage all of my clients to ask questions. I'm like, if I don't give you an answer, if you don't understand, ask me, and go and look things up. Don't just take my word for it. Do your research. There might have been a publication that came out 2 days ago, which I haven't seen yet. So always ask why. But
Well, this is actually perfect to lead into the next piece of the discussion. Because we're talking about all the bad stuff that's out there, but there are more resources now to share good, helpful information. So we just recently had Peter Baker on the podcast, and he co-wrote a book with Dr. Lane Norton, the Complete Contest Prep Guide. So now you're featured on the cover of that thing, one of the two anyway. People can choose it. Choose you or Lane. Personally, I think that's kind of an easy choice, but they to each their own.
We should pick her because she's on here right now.
Exactly. So guys, if you haven't checked that out yet, check that out. But also, you're soon releasing your own contest prep ebook that will support that. Could you discuss that book a little bit? And also, you also have a macro-friendly ebook. So anyone who doesn't really understand that stuff, tell us a little bit about those.
Sure. Okay, so the ebook that I already have is exactly as the title says, macro-friendly recipes. So obviously it is kind of more tailored towards people that are doing fat loss, because there is a big lack of resources, I think, when it comes to tasty foods, good foods, quality foods that you can still enjoy. So that is a 52-page ebook. It's available on my website, which is hbnutrition.com. So that has a lot of really good recipes in it. But to follow up on the contest prep book that Dr. Norton and Peter Baker have released, which goes into the specifics of and the science of fat loss, this book will support that insofar as it will allow somebody to literally take the beginning of their coaching prep if they're doing a competition, and follow the recipe book all the way down till the really awful, horrible, gnarly stages when their calories are really low and they're hating life and they're sitting on the couch and they can't even gain the energy to go over and change the channel on the TV. So it's basically going to have high calorie through the low calorie. It will be a recipe guru book. You shouldn't really need anything else to support you through a complete contest prep. But obviously it'll be great for a general population as well. It's just going to be a lot of delicious recipes, which I've spent a lot of time kind of putting together. So there's a really good variety. It'll have a complete shopping list of all your pantry foods, food requirements, utensils, and just some tips and tricks that I personally use and I give to my own clients in how to stay on track with their macros during a contest prep.
Actually sounds really detailed and practical. So maybe we
gonna
can put all the dinosaurs out of the business.
Who's going to be on the cover? Is Lane going to be on the cover?
Oh my God, I should feature him on the cover. He would love that, wouldn't he?
Just get him in like an apron, like a pink apron.
Doing some baking.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And maybe making one of his faces or something. Then he can I can just see it. See, if you do that, just don't give me credit, but just tell me hey, good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll give you some credits for the cover idea. For sure. Lane is very funny. So I'm sure he would take great pleasure in doing a photo shoot for that. Yeah, we have done quite a few kind of very satire style videos. Yeah. We actually did the keto one very recently about the keto zealots. If you haven't seen that, you should head over to the Lane Norton YouTube channel, and I've got it on mine as well. Nice. We have a couple of really funny ideas that we're gonna do very soon with when macros don't count. You can imagine all the situations and funny scenes. Yeah.
And the
memes, we are going to come up with.
the memes you could create with at least that picture, because I think it could.
Oh yeah.
If it goes viral, then the book even goes twice as viral. It's a great idea.
I had two thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had two thoughts.
So I'm very much looking forward to that. In fact, we have our assistant David here right now helping me on the ebook. So David Mathis. Yeah.
Two quick thoughts. One is if you're going to get a picture of Lane, gun in one hand, fishing rod in the other, in a singlet, that'll be a good cover. And then two, guys, literally.
And you training dolphins.
Yeah. The BioLane YouTube channel and now Holly's as well. But Lane's YouTube channel is the one that I don't spend a lot of time watching videos on YouTube. I like audio stuff. But yes. I watch all his old video logs. And I found him early on, and he's actually easily one of the most important influences on my career, and it led me to Sohi. It led me to their podcast, which is the first one I ever started listening to, and that sort of started me on.
Mine too, actually. Mine too.
Not surprising. It's still one of the best. It's got a lot of cool guests on it, but it started me down a road of listening to more podcasts, things like the Fitcast, which you really do need to get yourself on. Kevin Larrabee's stuff is great, and he's really amazing at making sure he floods it with women in the industry, which, as you said earlier, it's a male-dominated industry. So, if you can get yourself on that podcast, he's got a huge reach. We're averaging, just shy of 1,500 per episode, and some go bigger. But I mean, Kevin, I think it's 15,000 on average per episode. So
wow.
he's the big guy in this.
I want to go on his podcast to get 15,000.
Guido just wants.
I'm not smart like you though.
He just wants 10,000 followers on Instagram.
Give her the book question.
Yeah, you know what? Women buy things, so I think if once you've got the women listening to you, then you're set.
I got a photo shoot, and I read we had the prep book, and you know what? I got a few tips, so maybe 10,000 in 2 months with some photo shoot pictures.
Yeah, lots of abs.
Yeah.
So the second part of the whole thing about books is, and we ask everybody this: is there a book you've read, something that you found particularly helpful or influential in your life, in your career, something you wanted to share?
Goodness, I think I've actually been reading a lot of self-development books of late, and business books, which I'm not sure of your specific demographic that your listeners are.
That's definitely what we're looking for. Yeah, they go for that.
I very recently read on the plane coming back from Australia, The One Thing. It is a really, really, really great book talking about how to kind of prioritize your life, pick what you're good at, and it is like step by step how to achieve your goals. And I was just mesmerized, and I don't think I put the book down for the entire trip back. I don't think I slept on my Australia to back to USA flight recently. So yeah, The One Thing, that was a really great book.
I'm actually halfway through it. It's on my coffee table.
Oh, really?
It's the second time one of our guests has brought it up. And I was in a seminar in Seattle, just outside of Seattle at Luca Hosevar's Vigor Ground. And it was one of the books mentioned by one of the speakers. And so I added it to my list. And no, you're right. It's actually it's quick. It's so quick and easy to read and access. It uses language that's just so accessible. And I think anyone who's maybe doesn't read a ton, but is trying to get into it. Actually, I think it's one of the better books. And you're right. It's got a really great, simple message. So no, that's a wonderful book. Guys, seriously consider getting that one.
I actually have another one real quick, since you've already been your users. This one is called Unfuck Your Brain. It's by Dr. Faith Harper. She's a PhD in psychology, and it's a great one for women. If women are people that are listening, go and read this book. It's really good to help people with depression, anxiety, triggers. I learned a lot from it. There's like 2 different book covers for this. There's like I guess an academic one, and there's a fun one. Get the fun one. But that was a really great read. Unfuck Your Brain.
What about for guy? My brain's
no. Hold on, I got a question. I got a question here. So this one's actually really good because I noticed this trend, and I think a lot of people notice this, where provocative, vulgar titles in books. And what's that one? The red book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That is the most overrated piece of trash I've ever read. It's garbage. Guys, don't even waste your fucking time with this shit.
I haven't read it, but Unfuck Your Brain isn't. The PhD wrote it.
Yeah, but I guess I sort of get a little leery of the books with those kind of titles because I thought this Subtle Art was so terrible. And I think it's a fine book for someone who just wants to start getting into this kind of literature, but I thought it was just a guy who's basically telling a bunch of frat stories, trying to sound like he's doesn't give a shit when it's fairly transparent that he really gives a shit. So it just sounds like a pile of hypocrisy to me. But I hope that this book bucks that trend. And it's actually a pretty good one. So I'm going to add that to the list.
As he says that, so we had Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, and we started talking about one of his haters called him Dr. Fuckwad. And our provocative title was Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, a.k.a. Dr. Fuckwad. So we use that. He's saying our...
No, I'm talking about book titles.
Well, maybe we can call this one How to Unfuck Your Brain with Holly Baxter.
I'll do it, but it'll have stars beside it. That's great, but that's a good... I guess that's essentially what we're talking about when we even go back to these health issues. It's not that their brain's fucked, but like how are we working backwards to fix some of these problems? And a lot of it will come back to the brain. And I think that's where a lot of these things are going forward, is how do you include brain science into the fitness industry? Because it starts there.
Actually, we're totally...
I think a lot of the things are just totally common sense. But sometimes we just need reminders about, hey, have you thought about looking at this way? And usually the response is, oh yeah. So exactly as your point, it's about looking at something and working backwards. And is this realistic or not?
Actually, I totally think we're going to use this as the title: "How to Unfuck Your Nutrition" with Holly Baxter. I like that actually. So there's our title.
So now we're going provocative titles.
Yeah, now we're going provocative titles. So being that's great. Go ahead, Dean. Sorry.
I was going to say, we kind of already alluded to this, but if someone wants to consume all your information and kind of your thing, how to get you, how to find you, how to coach you, how to hear everything you got to say, where do they find you, and what's the best way to kind of get in touch or learn?
Yeah, of course. I think most of my social media is pushed through YouTube, which is my YouTube channel is just Holly Baxter, and my Instagram, which is Holly T Baxter. I put a lot of energy into those 2 social media sources. If you're looking for specific information about my client coaching programs and training packages, as well as some free information articles, you can find everything on my website, which is www.hbnutrition.com.au. So that is a very valuable tool. But also, obviously, I'm also the Director of Nutrition at BioLane. So Dr. Lane Norton has a fantastic website, which is just www.biolane.com. We have a fantastic membership website on there, which gives you articles, blogs, live webinars, very frequently updated articles and publications. So yeah, there's so much stuff available on his website as well.
Oh, that's great. Let's make sure that we put the website links in when we release the episode. We don't do a show notes. Like a lot of podcasts end up with a whole show notes thing. But like we had Robbie Farlow on here, and he basically gave up his podcast after 200 episodes because he's like, well, if someone's going to go and do all these show notes, which takes a lot of work and busy schedules. But we try to get the key information out there. So we'll make sure we include those. And let's get a link to your macro-friendly ebook on there. So we'll be releasing this one. Well, people listening to it now, but it'll be about 2 weeks from now from the date of recording that we'll release it. And then we'll set it all up. So guys, thanks for tuning in and listening to Holly. This was wonderful. Holly, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, it was really fun. Well, God, I wanted to show our audience what you had to say. And because we've had a lot of guests on who are part of your, immediate world. And
network.
Your network. And these are some of the best. If some of your listeners, let's say they're listening to our podcast for the first time because you shared it on your social media, guys, go check out Sohee Lee's episode. I think it's about the 7th episode we did. This will be about number 32 when it comes out. But go back and check out Sohee. These episodes are not dissimilar. This one pairs really well with what Sohee had to say. If you like Dr. Mike Isertel, his is the 8th one we did. And we just recently released Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, number 30. And these are all really amazing episodes that will go really well with what you just heard here if you want to see more of what we're doing. And if you like that, maybe you'll subscribe or share. And thanks to our longtime listeners for continuing to support us. Guys, thank you.
Perfect. Take it easy.
Great. Thanks so much, guys.
Shut up and sit down.